people are talking about your brand, they're making videos about your brand, you don't have control of your brand. Like, the community has control of your brand.
Brands are going to have to understand what their IP means, and it can be really broad. 40 million ads are already created via generative AI a day. They had 1.7 million user-generated content pieces generated in 3 weeks. I think talent has to have the tools to own their IP. Same with brand.
Adrienne, Ben, thank you so very much for joining us here on the podcast today. I'm very excited for the discussion that we have. The title of the podcast is The New Creative Frontier, GenAI, Participation, and the Rise of IP. Could you please both just say your full names, your companies, your role within that, and then also a fun fact, please.
Adrienne Lahens, thank you, Max, for having us here. I'm super excited for this conversation. I am the founder of Infinite Studios. We're still in stealth, but we are an AI platform that helps brands to safely develop and scale high-impact content in partnership with creators who happen to use AI as their primary creative medium. And a fun fact about me is I'm actually, as a passion project, producing a feature-length documentary right now with AI, and we're actually bringing the story to life with animation that's going to be delivered with AI, because we're able to do so much more from a creative perspective, and we're able to preserve the identity of the characters who are in sort of a precarious situation. They're kind of going through, they're basically 2 Russian men who were outed. They're gay Russian men, and they were outed, so they had to flee the country and come into the US through the Mexican border. So it's a story about that, sort of combines immigration and gay rights and geopolitical tension. So it's like very timely. But of course we have to protect their identity, and generative AI is a fantastic way to do that, because we can essentially create animated characters, but still preserve the authenticity of their storytelling, still preserve the, their facial expressions, their hand movements in a way that, is true to them, but also is, safe for them to be able to tell their story.
That's fascinating.
Every time I think I'm busy, I talk to Adrienne, and I realise just how busy she is. Not doing one thing, doing 2 things. But yeah, Max, look, this is amazing. Thank you very much for having us on. Benjamin Wollams, CEO, founder of TrueRights, as you know. TrueRights is a digital rights platform built for talent to give them the tools to help protect and monetize their IP in the era of AI. We're looking at ways that we can ultimately give them ownership of their rights, and how can we find a happy medium so that they can start to work with AI as a solution for brands. And it also kind of leans into what you're doing in terms of creative style. So yeah, super excited to be here. Fun fact, when you're starting something up, let's see how it's going, you have to kind of toy with when to start it. Are you going to make the leap? And there was a real moment for me when I actually bought a product off a deepfake video. Did I tell you this? Have I told you this?
No.
Okay. Well, there's a neuroscientist called Andrew Huberman. Don't know if you're familiar. Very well esteemed, and he's on a podcast. And there was a video, an Instagram reel, where he is talking about, and I won't talk about the brand because I don't want to, bring them any more awareness. Yeah, give them promotion. Yeah, imagine that. But anyway, he's talking about a product, and it's this like little rubber ball that you put in your mouth and you chew, and it defines your jawline a bit more. Super embarrassing, but I bought it. Now I've been in the influencer space for like 8 years, and so I went and bought this, and then fast forward 3 months, I've got this chewy ball in my jaw, chewing down on it, and I'm looking on X, Twitter at the time, and it says Andrew Huberman. There's a deep fake going around of me, of this brand that I did not condone. I've got this thing in my mouth. And at that point, you can't really it's like.
Did it work at least?
No, well, you tell me. If you're asking the question, it did work. Did it work? And so that's my fun fact. Yeah, I bought a deep fake. I bought a product from a deep fake, and it gave me complete clarity and understanding that if we did this correctly and properly, there could be a great commercial model here.
Awesome. I'm going to give a bit more color to both of you guys. We've got 4 parts, actually 5 parts in the podcast today. We have part 1, the new creative frontier, Gen AI and IP. Part 2, we'll be talking about participation as a creative strategy. Part 3, we're going to creative scale requires identity clarity. And then part 4, IP as identity, what needs to change. and part 5, a rapid fire of this or that questions. Are we ready?
Ready.
Awesome. Adrienne, you are a defining force at the intersection of creators, brands, and AI. You've built some of the most influential creator platforms over the last decade, from launching TikTok's creator marketplace and TikTok Symphony to scaling Influential as COO, and a leading brand strategy at BuzzFeed too. Now you're focused on how GenAI enables creators to operate like full stack studios. You're the heart where creativity is going. We're in a world where everything is becoming everyone is becoming a creative director, and UGC is exploding. Can you tell us a bit about your journey and how you see GenAI changing the creative frontier?
Thank you. First of all, very kind introduction, and I really appreciate that. So yeah, I think like what we're experiencing now in this space is really just a natural evolution of the creator economy, and one that I personally am just having, my kind of personal mission in my career has always been very focused on like democratizing creativity. And at this intersection that we're in right now, I think it's the most exciting time to be a creative person. And just in the same way that social media has redefined what it means to be a celebrity, now we have generative AI redefining what it means to be a studio, like a creative agency, Hollywood, frankly, right? And so you have creators that have the opportunity now, with access to cinematic quality production tools, to be able to move more upstream and do things that were never possible before. And so that's something that I personally am just so excited about in this space. And to answer your question about, kind of like my career arc, I, started my career, actually coming out of college. It was 2008 or 2009 at the time, and it was like during the height of the financial crisis. I remember I was interning at in Bloomberg's offices in New York, and in the bathroom, I was like washing my hands, and they had like all of these like TVs built into the mirrors in the bathrooms. It was like very high tech at the time, and I was washing my hands and watching this TV, and it was like Lehman Brothers was like falling, and like the whole U.S. economy was just breaking down. And I was like, oh God, I'm about to graduate. There's not going to be any jobs. And in fact, like there's been a few iterations of that with like COVID. A lot of people have kind of gone through this. And now, with AI, I think people are, very kind of nervous about the future of work. And that sort of intersection of like creativity and the future of work has really kind of shaped my whole career, I think, in many ways. But so when I left college, and it took me about 9 months to get my first job. It was a customer service job at an e-commerce company. It was early days of e-commerce, a company called Gilt Group in New York, and this sort of Silicon Alley is what they called the sort of space there at the time. And I was just like, I'm going to just take the first job. They were like, I think you're overqualified. You have like 4 internships at the United Nations. You just study abroad in China. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to take the night shift and do customer service. It's totally fine. And then I'll figure my way to like find another path, right? That kind of like shaped because it was, this sort of intersection of e-commerce and like, storytelling. And then I joined I joined BuzzFeed, was one of the first 100 employees there, and was really inspired by the idea of like, these new media companies kind of operating in a digital first format, and sort of what that meant for the future of advertising and native advertising. And at the time, it was all about banner ads. The whole industry was banner ads, and we were kind of evangelizing this concept that banner ads don't work. Nobody actually clicks banner ads. They're all accidental clicks. And you have to do native advertising, and that was like a very novel concept at the time. And then there was a moment in a sales meeting at BuzzFeed where we kind of like lost an RFP it was like a big RFP, and we like lost this RFP to a creator pretty much like working out of their bedroom. And at the time we had like $400 million in venture capital and like all this overhead. And I was like, uh-oh, there's something happening over there that I need to go be a part of. And so I joined Influential, and what I really appreciated about Influential's model was that they were taking a very agnostic approach. It wasn't like, they had to kind of balance between the brand of, like the publisher and the brand of the brand. It was more like, we can find creators that are going to be a native fit to your platform, and we're going to your brand, and we're going to look at all of this data, demographic, psychographic, contextual relevancy, and sort of like map you. And at the time, we had like an AI partnership with IBM Watson, and we were doing all these psychographic insights and kind of matching brands based, to the creators based on their personality. So it's kind of like, kind of an interesting AI kind of angle in those early days. And then, TikTok called me and they were like, would you like to come and kind of help build this TikTok creator marketplace? And it was just an opportunity to kind of do what I was doing in Influential, but like on a more global scale. And so absolutely took that call. And now, like, when you think about content, there's like user generated content, there's premium generated content, which is often, created with agencies. And then there's AI generated content. And creators fit into all three of those buckets seamlessly. And in fact, they are the hero of all three of those buckets. And so the AI piece is just a natural progression and also just a natural fragmentation of where the industry is going. Sorry, that was such a long story.
I love that. Yeah, I loved it. No, yeah.
It gives the color and the nuance, and it makes it so clear at the end as well. Thank you.
No, I absolutely love that.
Ben, you've been at the front lines of influence marketing since the early days as well, rapidly rising through the ranks of one of the original agencies, Influencer, from account exec to global commercial lead. Now you're building TrueRights to tackle one of the most urgent problems and challenges in our space, IP ownership, in the age of AI. You're creating the infrastructure that helps talent protect and monetize their likeness whilst giving brands the clarity to collaborate with confidence. What led you here where you are with TrueRights, and why do you see IP as critical for this new creative frontier?
Yeah, wow, I feel like, how far do I go back now? Because you've given all this context. I'm like, do I go for my first job? Day one, yeah. So, well, interestingly, I was in investment banking. I don't know if you ever knew this.
No.
I was at a company called UBS, so big kind of Swiss bank. And I actually got that job while sitting in a McDonald's with my dad. This is going completely off point now, but we'll go with it. And we were having a conversation about going to university, not going to university. And I wanted to go and I wanted to learn through application. So I wanted to go and also earn some money, be 18, go and see what was out there in the world. And I didn't also know what I wanted to do at university. Having this conversation with my dad, and he's very traditional. He actually, chairman of Saatchi's, publicist, old school ad man. And he wanted me to go to university because it was part of the process. You go to school, you get your A-levels, university degree, job. And I'm telling him no, and this woman stands up from a table behind us, and she comes over and she goes, I've been listening to what you've been saying, and we're launching a grad program, and I know you're not a grad, but we're looking for characters. Like, we're looking for people, characters in a good way, not, and we're looking for people to come and join and be a part of this kind of new kind of apprenticeship graduate program that we're starting to do. So I did that for 3 years.
What?
And yeah, I know. It was crazy, like in a McDonald's of all places. And my dad's like, jaw hits the table. He's like, I'm trying to parent my son here. And then, fast forward 6 weeks and 6 interviews at that age, and thrown into the the wild west of banking at that point. And very quickly I realised there was a glass ceiling, because I couldn't advise ultra high net worth clients on how to spend their money if I didn't know how to spend my own money. And I was 18 years old, and that was, you're so young, you're kind of so fresh faced and new to it all. And very quickly I realised that it probably wasn't the career for me. So I went travelling, and one of my really good friends is a guy called Ben Jeffries, who runs Influencer. And at the time he'd just done a raise, and it's really funny actually, because I remember him sending a pitch deck round and me thinking, this is never going to work. So I never invested, which I really should have actually. And then joined as an account exec about, at the very early days, probably, I don't know, 9 years ago now. And joined as number 3. We grew it to 150, ended up commercial director. And there was a job I had, and you really did start as account exec. And that, interestingly, I kind of feel like we're going through the same period right now of like influencer and AI, where you have to go and educate, provide rationale, really talk to the kind of big marketing leaders and bring them back down to earth on what this could mean. Because I didn't understand influencers at that point to the full extent. And I had a job actually when I was there, which was global partnerships. And so I'd go to likes of TikTok and Meta and Snap, and I'd be ultimately working with your platforms, these platforms, to develop what it looked like to build creator packages and creator adoption and monetization of talent and all that on the space. And what I very quickly realized was that there was usage rights attached to every piece of content, yet there was no way of standardizing it, pricing it effectively. There was no transparency in the market, but advertisers wanted the rights for content to put media behind it, and that's what platforms wanted. And so I started to understand that there was a concept of content being IP, and I started to dive a little bit deeper into that, and I started to realize the person was IP, and the whole thing was IP, and you could develop joint IP if two people were in it, or Brown was in it, and all of this. And then actually, and I've got to give a bit of credit to TikTok here, I was in LA, in Culver City, in your offices, and they showed me TikTok Symphony, and they said to me, here you go, you can take a URL, you can now put it in, and you can now, draw messaging and marketing narrative and product features, all this sort of stuff. Well, this is where we're going with it, into a brief, into a video, put an avatar into that video, and we can make content in seconds. And I was thinking, it kind of ruins our agency model, is what I was thinking. We had a great partnership with TikTok. But then they said, what are we looking at to put IP and talent IP into this? How do we do that? How do we build that workflow? And so concurrently, I was working with usage rights, working with IP rights, and that's kind of then what led me to TrueRights. And then obviously I told you about the deepfake story, which was the conversion piece that made me go and do it. But yeah, here we are. And I think now more and more we're starting to see how important it is with IP, AI rights, everything here at Cannes is talking about this as a concept. So it feels like we're in the right space. But more so, I want to make sure that talent are compensated for the value and importance of their IP when it comes to AI content, and find a way of working with it.
Can I ask a really quick question?
Go for it.
Okay, so
Please.
You said something so interesting. Oh, you said many, many interesting things there.
There was one thing in that.
There was one thing that I've been dying to ask you. Okay, so you were like, I'm not investing in this company. It's never going to work.
Yeah.
And then obviously you joined the company.
Yeah, about 2 months later. Yeah.
2 months later. Oh, that's like okay. That's crazy. So why were you like, this isn't going to work? Because the reason I ask this is because I feel like we're at this similar inflection point in this sort of like, as AI is evolving, right? Where it's hard for a lot of folks who've kind of been working in this space to really understand, where things are going and really see the future of how things are evolving. So what was it that you were like, this isn't going to work? And then what was the shift for you that made you?
I think within that period, I started to see content on YouTube and streamers like KSI, really. And then you saw, number one, I was consuming the content in a very short period of time, but you also saw that they were getting this kind of reach quite quickly. And I don't think there were many of them at that point. Casper Lee, co-founder of Influencer. And I think when I started to realize that they were grabbing eyeballs, and we say we're in the attention economy and everything else like that, that it was going to have a lot of power behind it. And if you could get the right infrastructure behind it, and I had a conversation with Ben Jeffries, who, like I said, was my friend since 13, and then he had to interview me, which is a really funny formal environment where he was like, right, let's now role play and let's go into a sales environment. And it was like, what are we doing here? And then I just realized that there was a lot of purchasing power behind it as well, because he started to talk to me more about the case studies and the evidence that he had. And suddenly it became far more compelling to follow the story. And also, I was at that point really intrigued to be a part of something very early on. I think my perception towards what I wanted to achieve in my career was massive UBS office of 7,000 people in London to now being in an office of 4. And it was like, wow, this is crazy. And I really enjoyed that. I really got caught up in that, the team, the camaraderie effect, and everyone wanting to have a common goal. Whereas in the big establishments, yes, there's this kind of North Star, but you kind of are just siloed. And so I think it was a mix of things, but I realized just at that point, talent were driving eyeballs. So yeah.
When we last spoke as a group, and you guys were explaining GenAI and IP to me, you gave an example that I found fascinating to listen to, but also you jumped right at it, and I want to give some space to that. So you mentioned this Lidl campaign. It was this wild campaign where just 3 colors unlocked record-breaking engagement. The participatory product development piece was something that you found fascinating as well, Adrienne. You were quick to call out the huge untapped opportunity with participatory participatory development with spec ads. I wonder if you could give more space to that campaign so we can have some context on that, but also why aren't brands leaning into this kind of creative collaboration at scale, and what could happen if they did?
Maybe you can.
I can set the scene with.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so there was a campaign, Lidl. I think I've said that right. Hopefully, but yeah, they took I think brand identity is going to become really important. I think there's going to be a lot of brand agencies that really succeed on giving a brand more value in their IP. And this campaign was taking the colours of Lidl, the yellow, blue, and red, and then providing an AI generative tool alongside those colours, so that consumers could come and they could write something in and create a product in those colours. And they had 1.7 million user-generated content pieces generated in 3 weeks. And at their peak, they were generating 1,000 in a minute, which is just crazy to think. Firstly, it shows like there's adoption of AI. I think like consumers want to use it, and there's people are participating. I'm not going to try and say the longer word. I saw you trip up on it. But people are now participating. But also what they did with it is, and I think this is one of the most exciting things I think for brands anyway, is they used it as a way of experimenting. It was A/B testing really, A, B, C, D. There were so many products created. I think 2,000, 20,000, something along those lines, in between that board range, where you could create bikes, Cybertrucks, golf clubs, whatever it was. And then they understood which was being searched for more, and then they built the product. And then they put a bike in Lidl. And for the first time ever, Lidl had queues out, well, not the first time ever, but one of the recent times, they had queues outside the door. People lining up to go and buy this new product that consumers had developed themselves, had cost them no money to develop, and then could go and basically A/B test it, product market fit it, and put it into their stores and go and generate sales. So fantastic concept.
Wow, you'll have seen just firsthand with influence marketing unlock this two-way conversation even further. That was already built and facilitated by social, but now at a whole nother level where you're tapping into multiple communities and they create this flywheel effect. This just takes it to a whole nother level. Like, this is a real extra extension of engagement. And that's what spoke to you, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about like why a platform like TikTok has been really the only platform in the last 10 years that's like kind of truly broken through the sort of duopoly that we've seen, right? It's because it's a platform that's made creativity really easy and accessible, and it's made community, like communities, something that's so participatory in the content creation process as well. And when you bring those two things together, and when you kind of put that on steroids with AI, it's really interesting to see like how that can proliferate in like interesting ways like this, right? So, when you think about like consumers really want to be part of the narrative. They don't want to be talked at. They don't want to be sold to. They want to be entertained. They want to be inspired. They want to be educated. They want to be part of the conversation. Like, one of the best features on a platform like TikTok is like the ability to reply to a comment with another video, right? So now you're actually crafting your content strategy around what's most interesting to your community, what's most interesting to your audience, and that becomes, a very multi sort of layered kind of conversation. And as brands are moving from like being like a brand as a publisher to like brand as platform, right?
Love that, yeah.
So they have the opportunity now to create a platform by which other creators, everyday people can be part of that conversation. And the best brands are leaning in, and they are doing that. And not only are they doing that from a content creation perspective, but they're also doing that from a product development perspective, which is where things really start to get fascinating from an ROI. And you see products just flying off shelves because it was informed by the communities and what they actually wanted. And now we can just move so much faster. And then on the spec ads piece, just to kind of frame, what that even means, there's a community of AI filmmakers and AI artists that are adopting these AI tools. And there's this misconception that like using AI is like press a few buttons, enter a few words and spit out like this amazing video. Like, that is not true. Yes, you can generate outputs. Anyone can generate outputs, but the storytelling component, like in a world where you can make anything, what do you make is actually really important. And in fact, the art form is all of the inputs. That's actually the art. The output is just the output. But what you actually put in is what makes that art. And so you have all of these like AI artists, AI filmmakers that are they're kind of experimenting with these tools, and they're creating ads on behalf of brands for free they're not sponsored, but they're kind of demonstrating their technical and storytelling capacity. And some of this work is, you see it and you're like, oh wow, like you would have thought like a top tier like creative agency came up with this idea and they hired some top tier production studio to film it and shoot it, and actually it's maybe one person or a very small team of people that are having that level of output. We're going to start to see brands really lean into that model, because brands need to create a high volume, a wide variety, and a very high velocity of content, and they need to do that with like less people and less budget and like fast, so much faster. So like AI is really the only answer. And then being able to tap into creators and work with creators in the same way you work with creators in terms of distributing from their own audiences. Like you should be tapping into creators to create content for your own handles and for your own ads, and not necessarily need to go through a very traditional pipeline and sort of production cycle, because you're going to need to create such, tap into all of these niche communities, and now you can do that at scale for like 1/10 the cost and 10x the speed.
Brand and platform, I love that, because I think we talk a little bit about, and it's the exact same concept, retail media. Retail brands, businesses want to be media, and media want to be retail, in the sense of, if you're a product, you want to now distribute and create content and be engaging. And if you're already media and distribution, you now want to try and commercialize it and have products to sell. And so I find that fascinating.
And not only must.
No, you must now, yeah, of course. The filmmaker piece. You also asked about brands, like what's the risk, I think is one of your 5 questions within that I missed. And I think we've seen it recently, Disney, Mid-Journey.
Yeah.
And I think first and foremost, I think brands need to find their identity with AI. And this leans really nicely into a bit of what you're doing and the creator landscape. And I think it'll be really interesting to see how brands start to develop in-house teams or start to find solutions that they're going to be able to lean into to help drive the creative of AI content and also the filmmaking of that.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be fascinating to watch and see how that develops. I think we've got to also be aware of, like, people don't adopt things overnight, like influencer marketing. We are still trying to get people to adopt it.
How long have we been in this industry?
Oh God, too long. But you now see like Unilever, 50% of their media budget, influencer marketing. But it's taking a long time to get there.
Yeah.
It's been a real shift, so you've got to be aware of that. And I think brands are very cognizant of IP, copyright infringement. And unfortunately, there is a conversation at the moment around all these tools about how they're being trained. And you've got to differentiate input, output. Brands don't want to be on the wrong side of that. And when it comes to output, of course, they can go and make sure, they hopefully work with partners like us and TrueRights. And what does it look like to make sure they got copyright approved content to license into these workflows to create content? But there is a lot of risk. And I think the last bit on this is to establish your why. Why am I using AI? Because just because it's a key word doesn't mean that we should be using it in every instance.
100%.
Definitely from our ROI, definitely from a speed of play, definitely from an efficiency perspective. But there's also, H&M came out and they started talking about how they're using AI models. Fantastic. I thought it was a great PR piece. They spoke about how they'd made these models, how they were storing them, how they were allowing talent to still be compensated and license these. And so they gave talent a forum and a platform to go and do this. They still got pushback. They still got bad press because they were now disregarding beauticians, hair and makeup on set, production. And so it has to be handled with a lot of care as to why are we doing this? What is the purpose behind using AI? At the moment anyway, I think once we get through that barrier, it will start to unlock and there'll be a lot of AI being used.
I think that's such a great point. And I think a lot of the industry thinks about like, okay, what exists today? And then AI can just do that for cheaper and faster. But in fact, the biggest unlock is like, this is all about what we can do tomorrow.
Yeah,
and we have been so artificially constrained by budget and complexity. We need to start as creative as the creative industry and especially creative people and creators, we need to start to like think so much bigger about what actually can be possible. So if we think about that model, right? If we think about the model, the H&M models, like what could you do now with these avatar models, right? That is not about being on set. Maybe that's like interactive, maybe that's dynamic, maybe that's immersive experiences, maybe that's like personalization, right? Like things that just weren't possible in, you know, that sort of like traditional, like let's bring people together and shoot something, and then move beyond that. And you know, when you see some of like the work from some of these AI filmmakers that are really kind of like innovating beyond, like
exceptional work.
Yeah, like you're like, whoa, like this could have never existed because it would have cost literally $1 billion to produce this scene. Like it's just not possible. And now, you know, and we're only starting to see the very, very like surface level of that. But I think the internet as a whole is going to look almost unrecognizable in the next 12 months.
Yeah.
I want to tap into this, like the scale that's yet to come. And they also talked about risk. It leans really nicely into part 3. Creative scale requires identity clarity. When we last spoke, we spoke about how GenAI is just going to blow the ceiling off from imagination. You can do so much more. It unlocks new creative horizons, more content, more creators, more ideas at unprecedented speed and scale. Opportunities awaken for UGC and branded entertainment. But with that, of course, the risk of off-brand, misfit creative can also increase. A diluted identity could skyrocket too. If imagination is now infinite, how do brands play in this new world? Is there a red thread, their core identity, the IP? Is that becoming the most valuable asset?
Who's taking this one? Well, I think we established brands are going to have to understand what their IP means, and it can be really broad. Like, Lidl were looking at their colours, their colour palettes, but IP can be developed across a number of different things, and you can have joint IP. You can have, and what does IP now mean as well? Like, how do we make sure that we're looking at ways that we can be more creative to what we've spoken about here around embedding culture, community, creative, and again, the purpose of why we're using AI. I think we need to be very careful with, and like I said at the very beginning, I think branding agencies are going to have a great part to play in here. And if they can start to find a way of harmonizing with AI and finding ways that they can start to use IP as a prompt, as a key identifier for consumers, for users, for communities that are now seeing content, the possibilities are endless. And I don't think there's a red thread per se, because I think, as you just mentioned, the next 12 months we're going to see a completely different landscape. So I don't think you can even call a red thread, because I think it's going to be very different to what it is now. But I think what we need to find for brands is something that allows talent to instantly know it's theirs. Like when we see content, how does it look? How does it feel? How can I build a relationship with this on behalf of a brand? It's the same as talent. Colors are a very obvious one if you have an identifiable color palette, but brands are going to have to work really hard, I think, in that sense, because it comes down to the why. It can't just be cost and effectiveness. I think that plays a big part, but it can't just be that. I think it's something like 40 million ads are already created via generative AI a day. UGC has been a massive part of that. UGC has transferred, creator, smaller communities to now being AI driven. And we've got to be really careful also with like, what does that mean for development of relationship with creator, with talent, with brand? Because it's something like, out of those 40 million ads, only 0.1% have talent in them. So what happens to talent? Do they get displaced? Are they now finding a way of working with AI because they have to? We talk about Unilever being 50% of the media budget, influencers. Okay, well, 50% to 0.1, that's like 50,000% increase. That there's a gap there that we've got to fill that allows talent to now go and be more creative, be more, have more monetization opportunity, have more ways of working with brand. And so I think identity is one for a brand. Two is, okay, well, how do we actually reduce the gap between current media plans that are non-AI and generative AI content so that we can keep the industry developing, because the worst thing that could happen is that we don't find a harmonious way of working and we get displaced by full AI, in my opinion. It's got to be a bit of both.
Yeah, I think you and I see the world the same way in many of the, in terms of this, where it's like, you bring creators in, and like it's the marrying of creators and AI together that becomes what's, really effective. A lot of people have this misconception that it's like a binary thing. It's like it's either AI and it's like fully AI generated 100% and it's all synthetic characters, or like it's not. And in fact, it's much of the best work, not all, I mean, there's some amazing work that is 100% fully AI generated, but like that's one segment of all of this, right? And then like a lot of amazing work is in fact a hybrid. And most creators today are not leaning in yet. Everybody's using ChatGPT for ideation. Every single creator is. And they're all like, yeah, of course I use ChatGPT. Very few of them have been integrating it into their production process. And part of the reason for that is because these tools are not that easy to use. In fact, they're easy, but they're not that easy to use to get like a really it requires a creative technologist. And so I hosted this event recently with this incredible community called Machine Cinema, and we brought together top TikTokers who had between like 1 and 10 million followers, and we paired them with small teams of AI filmmakers to basically see what happens when these worlds come together. Because the creator's already wearing a million hats. They're the writer, the director, the talent, they're the community manager, like name it. It's like a job that's just destined for like tremendous burnout, and yet they still prevail every single day. It's incredible. But now you add on, you have to know what's going on in all of these hundreds of models that are out there that are changing literally every second. Like, no, it's not possible. So anyway, creators are going to bring AI artists as part of their team, just like they hire post-production people, right, to help them edit their videos. And they're going to be able to up-level their content, and they're going to be able to move from unscripted to scripted maybe, or they're going to be able to introduce animation, or, do really cool stuff, right, like move cross-platform in interesting ways. So we had one of the creators, actually Drea Okiki, she goes by Drea Knows Best. She has this character that she's developed, Mama D, and she puts her makeup on, she puts her bonnet on, and she like does this character. Takes her a little while to kind of get into character, and it's a very big part of her social presence. And we actually took her character and we made like an episodic series, like animated series. So she acted as a creative director, and she was like, I'm a kid in a candy store. I can't even believe that all of these ideas that I had, that I was just like, animation is $30,000 a minute to produce. Like, creators can't afford to do that, like for their just everyday content. Now all of a sudden, animation is accessible to creators. How cool is that, right? And we had other creators do like explosions and like aliens coming from the sky. It was just super cool. So when you bring live action together and AI, and you bring creator authenticity and AI, and it's just part of the tool set,
Does the talent now become actors, do you think? Like in some way, shape or form? Like, because, and I don't mean in the sense of like traditional filmmaking, but your point about animation, I love that. I was with Character AI yesterday, and they have some amazing suite of tools, and one of them is animation. And we were talking about a certain talent, and now within seconds you can animate them. And actually, what does that do in terms of like opening up fictional characters for that talent, and then looking at different communities? Like, if you're a talent who's 30, could you now create an animated version of yourself that could be more relevant and to a community of like a younger audience or an older audience? And also, can you give yourself an edge so that you're a character of your own IP? I think it will be, I don't know where it will go, but those that nail it will do extremely well, I think, in terms of like reach, monetization, like all of this. And you talk a little bit about filmmakers and the AI artists. If you've ever seen any of the posts on LinkedIn, it's like, and they really are experts. It's exceptional. It will be like, I used Google VO, I used 11 Labs, I used Suno, I used, and there are like 6 different tools that they've had to use to compile.
They train custom models. Many of them are 2D, 3D animators. They're actually hand drawing images, feeding it in and training models. So that's why I'm saying like the input is actually the art.
Yes.
right?
100%.
And what we're in the platform that we're building portfolios that are purpose built for this medium, where it's all about what the input is and showcasing that to brands, not only to build that commercial trust, but to actually showcase the true artistic talent of this new segment of creators.
And the creative's so important. Sorry, I know we're probably going on. Yeah, and the creative's so important. And our CPO, a guy called Manon Dave, he did this keynote at South by Southwest, and he played on the concept of batteries not included, which is, when you're younger, you get a Christmas gift and there's no battery, so you can't actually then use the toy. And he was talking about being a creative technologist, and he is a creative at heart, but now has the ambition to do more with technology as its enablement, but it is ideas not included. So you have to bring your own ideas, you have to come with your own creative, you have to come with your own concepts, and then elevate it with this suite of tools. He does have the skill set to do it, admittedly, but you need to have the whole picture with it. It's fascinating.
You guys both are speaking about how we'll be able to unlock this scale by enabling a lot more people. You also said how everyone now effectively can become a creative director. The way in which you described what you're building actually suggests there's still that human layer of there's going to be a brief, right? And so that this creative person is effectively being sent in a direction that a brand can control, and so that they can provide that clarity. So that suggests that there's actually no change in risk necessarily on the brand identity to how you might be working with a creative agency or a creator agency already. In fact, it's just enabling them to provide better quality data, better quality creative, faster and more cost effective. When you spoke about spec ads though, and user-generated content and participation, I guess that's a slightly different approach. So you're not going to necessarily have that one-to-one or one-to-many approach where they actually brief you on something. And that's something that I want to give maybe a bit of space to with brand identity, because we in the work that we do at ThisThat see how anchoring a certain association can be the unlock to seismic growth for a brand, but also anchoring a different association can be the way to kill a brand and make the competitors win. And so that could be a risk. Is there something, like how a website might have a little press area on their website that you can then pull the brand logo from and different things? Yeah. Are brands going to have to up their game on this? And do they have to list out associations that they want people to anchor if they do these things? Like what does that world look like? And where are we going with that, like 5 years from now? How do you see that?
So many angles to this question. Like the first one, I would say like brands, look, first of all, like spec ads are probably not going to be like the majority of AI content, like for brands in the future. Like a lot of the top creators are doing these spec ads as like experiments, right? When they start getting this work and they start getting, they have a pipeline of incredible opportunities coming from brands, like they're probably going to be doing less of that stuff for free, right? Like they're pretty much developing this incredibly produced commercial content for free for these brands to showcase what's possible. And I mean, most creators that are operating at that level, there's a disclaimer there. This is a spec ad. Like that's first and foremost. Then the second piece to that is like there's always UGC. Like, there would be times where at TikTok, brands would be like, yeah, my brand's not on TikTok. We're like, your brand's on TikTok, whether you're on TikTok or not, right? Like people are talking about your brand. They're making videos about your brand. You don't have control of your brand. Like the community has control of your brand, and brand as platform, you can help shape that, and you are you can help direct it, but you're not managing it at that level. So brands are going to continue to get comfortable with that, and we're already seeing that to a large extent. But yeah, I think like,
I love
have
that.
You guys
Times
seen?
Have just changed.
Yeah.
You have to evolve and adapt to that.
Have you guys seen the new broadcast commercial? So there was an AI ad that was paid for by Kalshi that was, it was greenlit by Disney, and it ran during the NBA finals.
Yes.
And first of all, it is so unhinged.
Yeah, I know.
It is so unhinged. It is Super Bowl level, like unhinged and like entertaining and interesting, and like what did I just watch? But it was like a single creator, PJ, I forget his last name. Maybe we could link it. But he created this ad in 2 days, I think by himself, or maybe he has a small studio. And I mean, it's incredible. 2 days for a fraction of the cost. And what I also loved what he did.
That is incredible.
Yeah, what I loved what he did is it brings social to broadcast. It also brings broadcast to social. In really it's so fascinating when you see the video. He did like a behind the scenes video of this spec ad that actually wasn't behind the scenes. It was just another AI generated video with like people like being blown up on set. And like it was just like how hard it was to create this video, but like, you know, it was very out there. But it's kind of like the world building that you can do where you can make one kind of version and then you can make 10 versions of that story and tell different stories from different angles and like kind of create that universe.
I love all of that. I'm trying to wonder whether or not public data sets is a good thing or not for brands. To your point of like, would you be able to go and download it? Should brands have an identity that they can now provide to any consumer to go and create content? I'm actually not sure.
Trademarking a certain statement or your name, I wonder if that's just going to spill out a little bit further because they're going to want to try to get more control.
Yeah, and in the US, it's style is not protectable, but it's not IP protectable, right? So there are limitations. Brands can custom train their own models and maybe give access to creators to custom trained, you know, highly tailored, fine-tuned models that, you know, creators can maybe work off of if they wanted to create UGC at scale. There's ways that can, you know, they can have more control but still allow for the participatory nature of the benefits of that.
And I think they've got to try and join the dots up with to your absolute point, either the brands can bring it in-house and they can develop their own tools, or maybe we'll see, and this is, I'm just hypothesizing now, maybe we'll see generative AI tools become more social. Like maybe, I mean, you've kind of seen it with OpenAI, but what happens now if there are guidelines in place, there are ways of licensing, they have a feed page, like where you can go and create content, and it's really easy to integrate character, brand, you know, it's really consumable. Like, why can't they go into the social space? We all know it's a, you know, they then have they've almost gone the inverse from the likes of TikTok that are like, you know, social, creative, opportunity to create. They're going opportunity to create, creative. Now is it going to be social? So I think there'll be a real blend of, and I love your piece about broadcast social as well. I think it's now going to be, and talent especially can be all encompassing. We've seen talent be like social first or like film first, and then there's been a slight blend. I think now you're going to see talent become digital. Like they're going to have the opportunity to create one ad, and that can even be non-AI, and then have that ad in all different placements via AI, digital out of home, optimized for that. It can be programmatic, web, display ads, whatever else it might be, TV, series, episodes. Like I think that's going to be again, we come back to how do talent use it, but what does it allow to facilitate?
I want to move into talent because we've spoken about identity for a brand itself, not quite talent just yet. Part 4 is IP as identity, what needs to change. Ben, actually, starting with yourself here, you've explored the idea of monetizing personality traits as IP. Like in the work that you're doing with Terry Crews. That opens up a powerful yet complex new reality. Got a series of questions here.
Okay, I'll try and keep track of them.
What are the biggest risks that you're seeing, and what kind of legal, structural, and cultural shifts are needed to protect creators and brands alike as identity itself becomes monetizable?
Yeah, the biggest risk I believe is unauthorized use. Like I think talent has to have approval and ownership. And we talk about the attention economy. I'm trying to now weave in ownership economy. And so here we go. But I think talent has to have the tools to own their IP. Same with brand. And you spoke a little bit about personality rights there. Like copyright protects the expression. Personality rights somewhat, although it's not broad enough. Like California does a bit of it, but otherwise not in the UK. This is something that we're trying to lobby for in the UK government at the moment. Like how do we have these conversations about personality rights? Like how do we start to develop ownership of style, like of what someone looks like? And it is really interesting because when talking to Terry Crews, when we spoke to him, he firstly, a lovely guy, super humble, super honest, so forward thinking around generative AI as well. And we talked about intellectual property and we talked about personality rights, and it was him who coined intellectual personality. And it was a really lovely phrase where it kind of all came home a little bit. And when you look at these generative AI tools and name, image, likeness, and licensing, it isn't just your image. It's your height, your weight, the way you walk, the way you talk, your ethnicity, your eye color, like even your sentiment. Are you joyful? Are you sad? How can we start to develop this kind of personality profile, which is what we're doing at TrueRights, that we can then structure your data in a way that is compatible with these generative AI tools so that we can license it upon request? Because I believe that, so risk is unauthorized use, the opportunity is longevity, like infinite longevity for talent. We talk about the animation piece. You don't even have to have created content when you were younger and go back to that. You can now ultimately have multiple different characters. You can have everyone you've played, if you get the rights from whatever media house or publisher or whatever else it might be, you can now have you at any age. And so you could have a Tom Cruise at 45 and a Tom Cruise at 20. You could have, if you got the rights, Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible 1 and Mission Impossible 442, whatever it is now. And you can now license different characters into different content, but you could create the same ad, but now approach different audiences. And I think one thing I'm quite excited for is that difference of kind of ad architecture, where you have the same ad, but you have two different versions of the talent, and you can market to two different audiences now. And I'm also really excited for what happens to documentaries. To your point, but like what you're building, fantastic. I'm so excited to see that play out. I've always thought, I've watched like the David Beckham one, the Robbie Williams one. I thought, how do they have so much content? And like being the skeptical guy I am, I thought maybe they've used AI. Maybe they've just they've got a few pictures and maybe they've just gone and developed more behind the scenes content. And I think you'll start to see kind of almost this kind of documentary style content of a celebrity who's there now wanting to pave the picture of how he got there. Why can't we take kind of biographies, put them into AI tools and then start to generate that? So I think the opportunity is endless with creative. I do think, and hence why I'm so passionate about ownership of IP, is because talent needs to be compensated. We need to provide the frameworks. Tech needs to give us transparency. We need to build this ecosystem that allows creative to thrive with AI. Otherwise, it's going to be stop-start. It can't be binary one way or the other. We've got to have harmony in it. And that's why I'm trying to pledge as much as I can to talent to have a better understanding of what IP means, understand the value of it, and also put in places how they can control it.
Yeah, I mean, it's compensation and consent, right? Because
100%.
I'm sure everybody has seen that atrocious Super Bowl ad that Kanye West put up, right, earlier this year. And there was a response to that, which was this video that was circulating that I'm sure also everyone has seen, where it brought together all of these celebrities basically, condemning what Kanye had shown during the Super Bowl. And it brought all these, it was a really powerful piece, and a lot of people were sharing it, a lot of people were commenting on how important that message was. But then it turned out that it was fully AI generated, and none of the celebrities that were in that video had consented to it. And it was such a missed opportunity, because that is one of the benefits of AI, is that you can actually pull together people in a matter of 24 hours. I mean, these are celebrities that are all over the world that would never be able to it just wouldn't be possible to turn something like that around in 24 hours. But if they were in a platform, like your platform, right, and they can consent to yes, we want to be part of this, and an AI filmmaker actually produced it, and they got their sign off, you can have these collective, really beautiful responses to these moments in a way that still is offering full consent and or compensation if it's something where that's appropriate to do.
Listening to you makes me excited about what's to come. Because there used to be these ads, Pepsi, I don't know if you ever remember, they used to run these football ads where you'd have all of the best footballers come together. And I always thought, again, how hard must that be from a production, from a flying in, compensation, how much money has to go into those sets and everything. But they were amazing ads, and then they've stopped doing them. Probably because it's just ludicrously expensive and hard to fit into everyone's diaries. But now you can actually have collaboration in a way that you've never had before. I think it's going to be, I'm totally enthralled by it.
I mean, the pace at which we're evolving as an industry as well, we might be having thousands of examples this time next year.
Hopefully, yeah.
Are you ready to go through some rapid fire this or that questions?
Yeah.
Awesome. Conversion or community?
Community.
Community.
Community strategy or media plan?
Strategy.
Yeah, strategy.
Reach or relevance?
Relevance.
Relevance.
These are easy.
AI optimized or human curated?
Both.
You can choose both, by the way.
Oh, well, I wish we'd known that the campaign question.
Also, I feel like I'm on like Jeopardy. I'm like, I gotta get in first.
Insight or instinct?
Instinct.
Oh, yeah, I felt instinct, but that then felt like I was just using my instinct to say instinct.
Interesting. How so?
Because
Yeah.
I want it to be instinct, because instinct is like guts, and gut is feel. And like that's normally a good sentiment.
I actually think it's both, because
Yeah.
it depends on what side of the table you're on. And I was thinking about it from a creator perspective. It's instinct, 100%. But for brands, it's insight.
Spot on. Yeah.
Being first or being best?
Best.
Being first, then being the best.
Both, yeah.
Because, yeah, you want to get there first.
Spec ad or agency brief?
Well, spec ad kind of implies that it's unpaid. So let's hope that it's an agency brief that leads to an actual paid campaign
Yeah.
or program.
Mandate AI or ban it?
Wow.
There's no choice.
Yeah,
I mean,
how dare you? Yeah. Interestingly, I spoke to a big agency, and they had, this is not the short answer, they had two brands, and one brand had a lot more brands. One brand had said you can't touch AI with anything. The other one said, and I think it was the brand was Klarna, you have to have AI across everything we do. And so there are brands at both sides of the spectrum.
yeah, but like, guys, the train has left the station. Like, get on or get lost. Like, there's no choice. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you have to, find a way of working with it. Yeah, I agree, you have to.
And like, if you don't, like, be the change you want to see in the world. Like, whatever you don't like, whatever you don't like about AI, and there are many things, there could be a very dystopian future to all of this, 100%, and there's very valid concerns. But you can't just ban it. That's not the solution. The solution is lean in and figure out how to make it better. Like, I want to solve the monetization problem. I want to help creators make money using these tools. I don't want creators to be out of work, right? You know, I think you have a very similar mission in your, right? So lean in and figure out how to be a part of this.
I love it. Adrienne, Ben, thank you so very much. It's been a wonderful podcast.
Thank you. Yes, you've been brilliant.
This is
Thank
so
you.
fun. I could do this for hours.
Yeah, we have. Amazing. Thank you very much, mate.